And welcome back to the Whiskey Lounge. I am one of your hosts, Brandon. I am here with my truly astute friends. Let's go around the table, Nick.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another Whiskey Lounge episode.
Of course, and we have Wyatt.
What's
Surprisingly,
going? What's Hey, back again, boys. I'm trying to make it more, but thanks for having me again, and looking forward to talking about what we're doing today.
and then of course we have Trevor, who makes all of this happen because we cannot figure out how technology works.
You're too kind. Hello, everybody, and welcome.
All right, and just like normal, we're going to jump right into this. The Trump indictment. Oh, how the news cycle has been flooded with this. Why don't you take the lead, Nick?
So, where do you want to start on? Do you want to talk about how Trump was first announced over the weekend that he was going to be arrested on Tuesday, and just slowly been brought further and further back throughout the week, and now we just heard breaking news earlier today that the grand jury's not going to convene for the rest of the week. So we went from Tuesday arrest or Tuesday indictment to now it's not going to happen at all this week. Or are we going to talk about how?
I'll start from the beginning. I think is best. While I'm sure everyone's heard the story 37 different times now. It's not a bad thing if we start from the beginning. So,
Well, essentially, it all started out with a tweet, or I think it was a tweet or a truth from Trump over the weekend, saying that he is calling out for support for all of his supporters to go out and protest the indictment that was supposedly going to happen on Tuesday, where he was going to get arrested. Then you had Governor Ron DeSantis come out on Monday with, I believe it was Monday or Tuesday, with a whole speech talking about how he didn't want to get into the nitty gritty between the idea of Trump's indictment when it came to Stormy Daniels. But he did a magnificent job, in my opinion, of calling out the Soros-funded DA, who is Alvin Bragg, who's been trying to make this as political as possible, going after the former president, which is unprecedented in history, to not being able to get an indictment at all this week. Wednesday, there was a bomb threat to the Supreme Court building, which they basically told everybody to just not show up because obviously bomb threat, and had to make sure it was credible or not. And we found out today that they are most likely not going to, well, that not most likely, but they are not going to meet at all for the rest of the week. And last night we found out about Michael Cohen, who essentially lied to the Fed about Trump making the about Trump making the payment to Stormy Daniels, when in fact it was him himself that came out in a 2018 letter
and made the payments to Stormy Daniels.
Yes. Cohen is the one who made the payments to Stormy Daniels, not to Trump. Or, well, Trump did not make the payments to Stormy Daniels.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, he's at this point he's essentially or maybe literally exonerated from this crime, or from this potential crime. If you ask me, anyway, I think this whole thing has been ridiculous from the start.
The best part was, like, I don't know when it was. I think it was back in 2016 when they were trying to get on this train of the whole Stormy Daniels thing. Originally, Stormy Daniels dropped her original lawsuit, which was a defamation thing, and then while on tour doing her whole thing, she literally said that it didn't happen. So why they even went into this, I'm unsure. It's very obvious. It's purely political, and they just need to stop. Like, they really are just making themselves look bad.
Trump derangement syndrome does exist. The craziest part of this is, for one, whatever crime it is more than likely a misdemeanor, which has a statute of limitations in New York of 2 years. Even a felony crime has 5 years, but they were trying to get it in some sort of election finance thing, something legalese, to make it so that they can go past the 5-year statute of limitations. But the watching this whole thing unfold, in my opinion, was simply, it was just funny. Like, it was just funny to watch. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I think it's pretty much done after the turmoil of the last few days. But it was certainly interesting to watch, and they're still going after him. What is it now? 4, 5, 6, 7 years later, nearly 8 years later.
Well, I don't think it's going to stop all the way. I think it's going to keep heading in this direction, and they're going to find something new until the elections start up again. And then probably through the elections, and then it might die down a little bit after that, depending on who gets elected and everything.
Well, that's true. The Trump derangement syndrome isn't going away. I meant this particular issue. Maybe I'm thinking they might give up on this one finally with everything that's come out, though. Although, however, derangement is derangement, so maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, they're finding something new every time now. I mean, who knows what'll be next? Maybe he'll be charged for war crimes like Putin later on. They're coming up with new stuff every day.
Yeah,
So,
you said a mean word. That's a war crime now.
Yeah, exactly. His Twitter page was offending too many people, so now those are war crimes.
There's a crime against humanity.
Yep. Lock him away forever.
So there's a couple of interesting facts about Michael Cohen, who has pretty much been the crux for the whole Trump indictment scandal that's going on right now. Back in 2018, he was charged and convicted of several issues, including tax violations and campaign violations for finances. This is from the Department of Justice's website, the Southern District of New York. In one instance, Cohen caused American Media Inc. AMI, which was identified in previous court filings as Corporation-1, to make a $150,000 payment to one woman. And in the other instance, Cohen made a $130,000 payment, which was Stormy Daniels' payment to another woman through an LLC he incorporated for the purpose of making the payment. Cohen was reimbursed for the latter payment in monthly installments disguised as payments for legal services performed pursuant to a retainer, which when in fact no such retainer existed. So essentially what this guy did was he thought he was going to be able to be slick. He thought he was going to be able to get away with making the payment himself without being told to do so by just hiding it as legal fees. So when you get to be a billionaire like Daddy Trump, you don't really pay attention to like small little bills, and small bills to him would be thousands and thousands of dollars. So when you see a bill for legal issues and you just keep rubber stamping and saying, "Oh, yep, I'm going to pay it. I'm going to pay it. I'm going to pay it." Eventually, he probably caught on after a little while, but he did eventually get his money from Trump.
My favorite Trump tweet is, "If you're looking for a magnificent liar, I would absolutely appall you to not look for the service of Michael Cohen." It's my favorite Trump tweet ever.
Hell yeah. He's just a sweet guy.
Who?
Yeah,
Trump or Cohen?
Trump.
not
That's my boy.
not Cohen.
Not Cohen. What the
Donald
hell?
is. Yeah, no, he's got a for a billionaire, he's got a very down to earth feel. I like Trump.
Well, you know how he got his businesses started, right? He got a small loan of $1 million from a sponsor. Wouldn't that be fantastic?
We can only be so lucky.
Yeah.
So what you'd have to think about all this smashing, or Trevor?
I mean, it's nothing new. They've continued down this road of finding something that's, they can try and tug the rope on and maybe eventually find some kind of, felony charge or misdemeanor or something that will, make him ineligible for the next election cycle. And they've been doing it since 2016. It's nothing new. I mean, it just gets tiring, and nobody really cares about it at this point. And everybody's like, the next time that they see this in the news, they're going to care even less and less and less, like they have been for the past 4 or 5 years.
I will say something I was thinking to myself the other day is for a billionaire businessman who, I mean, come on, every single one of them from Trump to some of the bigger ones like Soros or I'm drawing a blank on the people who made like Amazon and Facebook. But anyway, either way, yeah, for people like that who there's something that if you really were to look, you could definitely find pretty easily, even probably. for something that should be easy to find from a billionaire, you're not finding anything. And I personally think that speaks volumes to at least Trump's business etiquette. Tongue twister, that one.
Well, the guy has so many outreach programs. Like, I mean, nobody actually knows how much he's involved with the community and how many jobs he actually does. And for only these small things to pop up over his entire life, I mean, he's what, like he's over 60 now, right?
Yeah, he's in his 70s.
Yeah, he's in his 70s. And the dude, I mean, is just still a stand-up guy. And I think a lot of people just misinterpret what he's doing just because he's on the right side. So they always want to try and find something wrong with him. I mean, is he guilty of this thing with Stormy Daniels, with Cohen? I don't know, but the dude is able to cover himself with it, even if he is. And I think he didn't do it, and I think it's a lot of stuff just going against him just because they don't want him to go in the next election.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that they're going after him just because he's on the right. If you take a look at his entire presidency, you had the rhinos like Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy, and all of them going after him all the time, when he was supposedly the leader of their party. The right does not like Trump. Let me rephrase that. The establishment right does not like Trump. Now, if you take, for example, the former Arizona candidate Kerry Lake, or you take into account like Matt Gaetz or Jim Jordan or any of them, they are very big Trump supporters, but they are willing to call him out for things that he doesn't like. Whereas if you look at Kevin McCarthy or Mitch McConnell, they would never let Trump have a good day. They were always trying to go against him because Trump was the bull in the ivory tower. He was the guy that went in there, tried shaking things up, and he was just bogged down nonstop from the time he not entered office, but before he even entered office, to the time all the way up until now. So this man is constantly under attack over and over and over again. The man hasn't been president for, what has it been, 2 years, almost 3 years now, and he is still in the news cycle. He is still the front runner. People are still talking about him. He is in the news every day, whether it's a front page article or not. He is in the New York Times every day. He is on CNN every day. He is on Fox News every single day in some way, shape, or form.
But that's good that his supposedly colleagues were calling him out. That is a good thing, because he wasn't taking it personal or anything along the way when they were calling him out for these things, and he still stuck to his guns. But the reason a lot of people don't like him is because he's a businessman. And you know what America needs right now? A businessman. We're so far in debt. We don't know. I mean, the dude did a phenomenal job. And that's why I'm bringing up that they're always, I mean, it was something different a couple months ago. Now it's this thing with Stormy Daniels. They're just trying to highlight him because the left doesn't want to have him take office again. And the Republicans, some of them might not agree with him, some of them might not like him, but they know that he being elected would be a great thing for America, and that's why they would back him.
I gotta say, I am completely torn right now between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis for 2024.
How dare you?
If Ron DeSantis does announce, and if he does run, I am very much torn between them, because seeing what Ron DeSantis has done in Florida, I am absolutely in love with. Now, he is a bit squishy on certain things. He is not very, very hard when it comes to certain subjects, like the whole but the whole drag shows, including the minors, how he's just taking away liquor licenses with a couple of businesses down there. He should be a little bit harder on that. But overall, I think he's done a great job. Trump, if he gets in, he's going to be the bull, like I said, in the ivory tower, but he is going to be unchained. He's not going to have to worry about anything at all when it comes to re-election, because it's his last term. He can go in there, he can do exactly what he wants without really any repercussions, as long as it's within the confines of the law. So I'm really stuck between, do I want the loudmouth back in there who's willing to go on a rampage, or do I want to have the guy who's willing to have the same politics that I like, but might not be as hard as Trump
One of
would?
the biggest problems that I have with DeSantis is actually something that he said once. He says how much he admires George H.W. Bush, which that statement alone, him looking at that as an example, is in and of itself a problem when it comes to Trump versus DeSantis. But I'll say the same thing here that I said to our friend Josh or Nipple Hat when he was trying to talk to me about this in however many words he could.
You put a sentence together?
He did put a sentence together.
Wow.
If it comes down to it, it depends on the type of fight it comes down to. In a fight, say they're all sharks in a pen with 20 sharks in it, Trump's gonna win. Vote for Trump. If it turns out into a fight where you're really just seeing Trump versus DeSantis, then for the sake of getting the victory, I'd probably vote for DeSantis because realistically, that's a fight that DeSantis is gonna win. Realistically, though, I'd take my chances with Trump over DeSantis at least at this point in time. I really that George H.W. Bush thing that DeSantis said in particular, I really can't get out of my head. That's not an example. George H.W. Bush is not a good example to lead yourself with.
No.
That and the thing with the Hyatt really leaves a very sour taste in my mouth. There's already laws in this country that you can use to convict people who are literally exposing children to sex. Don't be a squish. Go actually do something.
Now
We
DeSantis
shouldn't praise
is
him for doing the bare minimum. Even if other people aren't even doing the bare minimum, he still shouldn't get praised for doing the bare minimum.
he's a senator?
Yeah,
No, he's the
He's
governor.
a senator.
No,
Yeah,
no,
He's
no,
the
no.
governor.
Ron
of Florida. Yeah,
DeSantis.
not senator. Governor of Florida. Yeah.
Yeah, governor of Florida. Okay, so I mean, yeah. How long's he been governor?
This is
He's been
his
governor
second
for a
term.
while. He's a very good governor.
Yes.
He is a absolute runner up when it comes to Trump. He can absolutely stand up to Trump. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised you're not that familiar with DeSantis. But
Essentially,
me personally, again, my money is just still on Trump right now. I would rather see, if I had my perfect way of things, I would say let's get Big D back in there, and then let's get DeSantis in afterwards.
Yeah, because the DeSantis can always run later. But I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, man, right now we need a guy that knows business first, and he did a phenomenal job with all other countries. For a time being, America was a little bit feared again, and we were standing our ground. And I mean, I don't know too much about this DeSantis guy, but if what you guys are saying is that you think he'll hold his potential, then I mean, equally they seem like really good leaders. And at this point, I really don't care if you're left or right. I just want somebody in office that knows what the hell they're doing, because we're not getting very good options here, and the guy that's currently in office right now is kind of putting us down the shithole.
Hey, man. Hey.
come on,
Jack,
man. Come on.
Well, the
gotta let us
reason we lost
mutilate
the
the kids,
Revolutionary
man.
War is because we didn't have enough airports. No
But
shit.
I'm honestly very surprised that you don't know a little bit more about Ron DeSantis. I mean, he was the absolute front runner when it came to the governors back during the whole COVID debacle with all the lockdowns and everything. He was a very fervent supporter of reopening the country, reopening Florida, and his leadership brought Florida through to be one of the best economies in the country post COVID, and he won his first election by a very, very tight margin, where I believe it came back to a recount. But then in the very last election, the 2022 election, he blew it out of the water. He turned Democratic safe sections or Democratic safe counties Republican. He got cities in Florida to vote for him. Actual cities, not necessarily the cities that they're cities like Baltimore or DC. He got people like that to vote for him, which is just shows how wonderful he was as a governor. Has he made some bad decisions? Yes. Is he not as fervent or firm on a lot of the stances that he should take? Yeah, he should be a little bit more firm. He should be a little bit more heavy-handed. but overall, he has been a phenomenal governor. The only person
I'm sure.
Go ahead.
I'm sure I've seen him. Trevor, can you pull up a picture of him real fast? I'm sure if I see him, I would know what he is.
Yeah,
you know,
you probably know who he is.
I'm probably just brain farting here.
Just look up a picture on Google real quick, and
Yeah, I got you.
You'll probably know who he is. Yeah, but yeah, he doesn't seem he seems like a phenomenal candidate. My money just is on Trump. There's just a few things that don't rub me right with Ron DeSantis.
That's the boy right there.
Oh yeah, I've definitely seen him before. Okay.
Yeah, it's just put a face with a name, and you're like, oh, I've
Yeah.
seen him everywhere.
I've definitely
Ron
seen him everywhere. Yeah.
Ron
Ron
DeSanctimonious.
DeSanctimonious.
Now, I will have to say that during this whole Trump indictment story that ended up turning into, let's be honest, nothing. It was just a whole bunch of fluff. It was a whole bunch of headline articles, clicks in order for the news corporations to keep on going. I will have to say I was not a huge fan of Trump coming out and attacking DeSantis over his comments. That's nothing new for Trump. Trump does like to attack his constituents on the right, but I think a lot of go ahead.
Not that it's a good thing. I don't think anyone should do it, but that's a pretty normal thing with the right during an election cycle. It's not just Trump. People like to point out Trump because Trump is definitely louder than the rest of them, but it's a pretty normal thing with all Republicans during an election cycle, or at least a presidential election cycle. They all attack each other. And that shouldn't be a thing, but it's a pretty normal thing. So I mean, I didn't pay it much mind.
I mean, it's the same thing for the Democrats as well. I'm talking strictly on a level of I listened to Ron DeSantis' speech talking about the situation that was going on. He was calling out the Soros-funded DA, i.e. Alvin Bragg, saying that all this is just political, and talking about how Soros spends millions of dollars every election cycle to get DAs elected so that they could do exactly what the woke want them to do. And all he did was make a comment saying he can't comment on the whole Stormy Daniels thing because he doesn't know enough about it to say one way or another. And then Trump just blasted him, essentially saying, well, when you get caught in a scandal like this, or you get attacked by a group of women or friends or even possibly a man, that you're going to want friends to defend you too in this situation. And I don't see where that was called for whatsoever, whether you're on the right or on the left. Just like, why attack the dude for not saying anything about Stormy Daniels, but calling out the people who are attacking you? And I understand it's election season. They're going to have to get their jabs on each other, but he was trying to be somewhat of an ally.
I see Trump's point. Like I said before, I don't think any of them should be attacking each other. I kind of see his point. It's kind of like I keep saying, like you even said before, you need a heavier hand. I don't think a sort of sided neutrality is a good thing. I think you need to be more forward. And I know on Twitter, I saw Matt Walsh said the same type of thing, where he should openly say, hey, we're not gonna let this happen. And then Ben Shapiro, and I love them both, by the way, was like, well, actually, according to Article 5, Section 2, I believe is the exact thing of the Constitution, he legally, Ron DeSanctimonious, cannot do that.
Dude, that guy's a walking encyclopedia.
Yeah, and he's not wrong. Realistically, legally, yeah, he can't do that. I mean, but in my mind, though, they're still say it. Just say it. Like, if that's reality, you need to kind of push back here a little bit. If they're trying to unlawfully detain this man, then kind of give your support there. You're not going to let them. Be a little more heavy-handed with it.
No, yeah. I think it's like very, very funny. I'm going to go slightly off topic with this one, but it's still in the realm of the indictment on Trump. I really want to know what the big push is for why they're trying to get this man outside of, we're trying to stop him from running again, trying to stop him from getting elected. If they truly cared about women's rights, or the way that Trump just paid hush money to this woman to just get her to shut up and this and that, why aren't we going after any of the people who were on Epstein Island? Like the list of people for that.
That's a whole different thing, man.
You
Like,
can't get
I
into
know
that.
that's
You're not supposed to
can't
talk
do
about
that.
that.
You can't do that. Dude, that's
But
a
like,
segment we
banned.
talk for 2 hours for.
We're getting
I
banned
know,
now.
I know, but
Forbidden
still,
Island.
it just boggles my mind the hypocrisy of it. Like, we're gonna go after this man because he's what, orange? That he's just a bull in the
they're
ivory
racist
tower.
to
That he's
Italian orange people.
that
Yes.
he's done a lot of bad things, yes, but overall he was a benefit for the country. He just had a bunch of mean tweets. Like, why go after him for that when you're not going to go after the hundreds of big name celebrities who went to this man's island?
Great.
And
Now
actually,
you know what's gonna happen now? Now we're
I'm
gonna
gonna
have
get
the Clinton. We're gonna have the Clintons come after us now because of this.
Exactly.
Thanks a lot.
I'm gonna.
You're welcome.
This is a good conversation I have, but it would be lengthy, so I'm gonna give one comment and just end it there. We're gonna end it there. My only thing I'm gonna say is, I mean, it doesn't surprise me. It's not even. It's the thing that always is in the back of my head. They don't care. They don't care. They don't actually want to. They don't actually want to practice the things they preach. It's all, like I always say, it's all narcissism. It's all this sense of the self, this inflated sense of the self, I should say, this narcissistic and hedonistic behavior. That's all it is, and unfortunately, it's the reality, and that's what we're really fighting here. Like, Jordan Peterson puts it a pretty good way. It's like, you need liberals because you need times of innovation, but you need conservatives because you also need times to be like, hey, this is tradition, this is real, this is reality, because liberals do generally exist outside of reality, but that's where sometimes they can kind of push innovation in some ways.
Yeah.
I'm gonna blame it all on mathematicians and fucking statistics.
Yeah, I'm gonna
That's
blame
what
it
it
on
is
math,
because it's all
numbers-
approval ratings.
Numbers suck. I hate numbers. I can count to 11 and a half. That's about it.
You know you can't count past 10. Do not lie to this audience.
Fine. I can only count the 9. 9 and a half.
That's better.
Actually. Yeah.
No, you're pushing with the half.
All right. Only all right. Well, I think we've said our piece here regarding Trump. Everyone has been suffocated with this the last week now.
We've been suffocated the last 7 years with all this.
Yeah, I know, exactly. So we can move on to something else. Something else people are suffocated with, but a particular instance that I haven't seen many people talk about. Nebraska legislature advances bill banning gender-affirming care for children. Another win for life against the cult. However, there is one particularly stubborn murderer, cultist, whatever you want to call them, that is trying a filibuster. Actually, I think their filibuster has failed, but attempted for how long, Nick?
So she has been filibustering, and let's go ahead and call her by her name. Her name is Kavanaugh. And she has been filibustering ever since February, against a bill. What was the name of the bill? The bill was called LB 574. She has been filibustering it since February, just trying to stop it, calling anybody who supports the bill nothing but murderers, how they're trying to encourage a genocide against trans children. And there's a video that went viral on Twitter of her essentially saying, I want a roll call. I want to have everyone's name down who's voting for this bill to hurt our children so that we can have names, that we can have the blood on their hands when we come back and we fight against this. And ever since that, she's been pretty much beaten in the filibuster. She has been filibustering every piece of legislation that has gone over through the legislator ever since then, as a way to try to get this bill withdrawn so that they won't vote on it again, which last I checked, the bill has gone through its first vote and it did pass in the first vote.
Yeah.
But she is trying to get it withdrawn entirely and is being a big pain in the ass when it comes to everything else. So nothing is getting done in Nebraska on a state level. Nothing at all.
I like how she brought up too when she said, how come we're not talking about circumcision? I don't think she
Oh,
actually
God.
knows the in depth to circumcision. She does know that it's medically because it helps males be cleaner downstairs in their private area if they have circumcision. That is the main reason for it. And it's been done for generations because it's cleaner. It causes less concerns, and it's actually been known to cause less cancer, particular like testicular cancer or anything like that in the groin area. So I was just surprised that she brought that up, and it kind of affirming that she's comparing that to shock treatments, lobotomies, and forced sterilizations. Like how can you compare that when one has been proven medically that it's actually helping people for circumcision?
You can't. That's kind of the whole point. They just throw things into the air and hope that it sticks. Which to unfortunately it does stick to some people. A lot of people don't understand circumcisions for both the reasons that you implemented or the reasons that you said, and there's also a religious reason behind it. Kind of like it's the token of a covenant. What the hell? Like with Abraham, I believe it was something
Yeah,
in
it was,
Genesis or
it was
Exodus. I
it was Genesis, and Abraham basically talked to God, and God's command was that he wanted him to kill his son Isaac at first. So Abraham followed him and wanted to sacrifice his son on the rock. Well, the God saw that Abraham was going to do it. He saw how well he followed him, and then instead he said that eventually what I want you to do is circumcise your son and then spread it throughout your village. And it kind of spread from there because it was a flesh taken given to the Lord is how it was kind of put.
yeah. Yeah, there's two entirely different reasons compared to what they're doing where they're completely just chopping off a young man's genitals and then plastering fake tits onto him, and vice versa, cutting off a young woman's breast and then plastering a fake penis on them, as well as socially transitioning them even before that, before they turn 18, 19, whenever they can have this surgery, or in some places having it since a young age. Like poor Jazz Jennings. There's a video recently. I'm sure everyone's seen it. Jazz Jennings, the first person to really go through this young term, I guess you can say, gender transition. And there's just a video of her talking to her mom on their reality show where she's just like, I don't ever feel like me. I don't ever feel like me. And I feel so bad for this. I believe they're a young man who's been forced since they were 2 years old or 5 years old, I believe it was, to act as a woman
It's
by
just
their
it's
deranged mother.
heartbreaking to see too because man, these are kids. They have no idea what they want to do later on. And if you look at the statistics for everything for these surgeries that people got later on, I want to say, don't quote me on the numbers. It's like almost 70-80% of the people actually, what is the word? Regret. They regret getting those type of surgeries because they were confused at that time, and now they're like, "That's not who I really am." And so it,
There
yeah,
there is a high number of regret. It's also the 70 to 80% that you have. I think you're thinking of the suicide rate because the suicide rate doesn't
yeah,
change, and I think it is like a 70 to 80% suicide rate or something like that. It is something that's crazy high. Again, I guess don't quote me on the numbers, but I'm
yeah.
I'm nearly positive it's about 70 to 80% on the suicide rate there, and mutilating these people, taking away their testosterone or injecting them with more testosterone. That's not gonna it's not gonna help them. You're just gonna hurt them more. You're not getting them the actual help that they need.
Right, and it's just gonna lead to problems later down the road. These kids, they're gonna grow up like this now, and they're gonna be like later on in life, well, who really am I? And then they're gonna go into depression, and then all of a sudden, you're gonna have all these kids growing up into adults later on that are on these medication for depression, anti-anxiety, and everything because they can't really cope with what their parents made them do when they were younger. And so now, you remember that quote that I did a couple episodes back where, you know, I think it was Joe Rogan that said it, and he said, "Hard times create strong men create weak times create weak men.
Joe
And
Rogan has said that, but many other people throughout history have
Yeah.
said that.
well, Joe Rogan's
Very
the
common.
best.
I got,
Yeah, I'm
Joe
quoting him.
Rogan gets
I
credit.
get,
Quoting him.
Joe Rogan
I-
gets the credit.
Yeah, he
yeah,
does.
I get what you're, I get what it is that you're saying, though. With that, and I mean, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the detransitioner movement. I wouldn't be surprised if you're not, because it's actually severely like beaten down and just hidden from people. What I'm trying to think of the right word. You don't see that. They don't get the media coverage. The detransition movement do not get the media coverage. Particularly Chloe Clow is the one that I know off the top of my head, because I know she talked at Matt Walsh's rally. And you have all these people from the Alphabet Mafia, LGBTQ plus IA 748946A ABC community, all on the outside of the protest there. And Chloe goes up to talk about her experience and how she detransitioned. She's an 18-year-old girl. And it's heartbreaking to hear her voice, because they've done like permanent damage to give her this deeper voice. And you hear all of them just yelling, traitor, traitor, traitor. Like they're not even listening. They don't want to listen to what she has to say. They don't want to see that someone can have a different experience, or a more real experience, I guess you can say. Because a lot of them just refuse to go to the right, because they think that they're hated by the right, even after they trans and regret it.
I will
it's
say,
sickening.
I just pulled it up on the National Library of Medicine, which is an official government website, and they say data indicates that 82% of transgender individuals have considered killing themselves, and 40% have attempted. If those statistics don't speak for themselves, I don't know what does.
But the argument on the left for the people who are pro-trans and pro-affirming care is that if you don't affirm them, that's when they want to kill themselves. They stand by affirmation that you have to affirm it. You have to give them the hormone blockers. You have to mutilate them. You have to cut off their genitals, do top surgeries on them. You have to do this, or else they will kill themselves. Yet, when you take a look at the numbers, a lot of people who take the hormone medication, who do all this, still end up being severely depressed and are still likely to kill themselves, no matter how much you affirm them. And just look at media outcry for how much support that they do get. It's not a lack of support for them that they're getting. It is a genuine mental issue.
Yeah, and I don't think, these kids are growing up with their parents being heavily involved with all this. I don't think, it should be a law that, you can't have kids do this until they turn 18. If they want to make the choice after 18, go for it.
I'm
I
100%
don't
with
care.
you.
Well, I mean,
You're an adult. Do what you
If an
want.
adult wants to do this, let them do this. But if a
Let 'em do it.
confused kid is,
Yeah.
just confused, I mean, everybody knows during adolescence in particular, like, you don't know what the fuck's going on with your body. You don't know, like, you're just a very confused person, and you're going through all these changes, and life itself is gathering new meaning. You're becoming more conscientious about yourself and about the world around you at large. And that's not the time to, be encouraged by outside sources, which you start considering more heavily during those times. And they're being influenced by this culture that is pushing it. And, they're saying they're pushing it and they're making it more affluent because, they don't want people to be targeted or anything. But really, all they're doing is making it more affluent and encouraging people to do it. And it's like,
I mean,
during that age,
don't-
what things, like, it's a commonplace thing that people at that age look for something and some purpose to join, to have a fulfilling feeling within themselves. Like, people seek out something to do that gives them purpose. And I think that is part of the confusion, is people are finding this and they're like, oh, maybe this will give me purpose. And then they do it and they're like, oh, well, shit, this isn't who I am.
I understand.
Humans, particularly like community, and especially any sort of children under 10, they are very impressionable. So if they're privy to this stuff, if they're shown this stuff, if they see this stuff, they're going to fall into it. That's how it happens. Or that's just how it is, rather. I would also say with matters like this, I don't squish on it at all. I don't think anyone should be able to mutilate themselves. That's an affront to God. People shouldn't be able to mutilate themselves no matter how old they are. Like if people want to sin, they want to do drag, they want to do stuff like that, they could do whatever they want. Jesus died for our sins. If they want to be hedonist, they can be hedonist. But when you're involving children in that, and for one, when you're causing harm to yourself, and by extension, causing harm to yourself is going to cause harm to others. That's just how it works. None of it should be allowed.
I mean, that's a very religious way of looking at it in a country where we affirm, and I completely agree with this, religious freedom. I think that anybody can do whatever the fuck they want with their body after the age of 18, as long as they're, sane individuals.
That's a very well, for one, none of these in the nicest way possible towards these individuals. They're not sane isn't the word I'd use. They're people that do need help. That's why you shouldn't just let them to their own devices. I don't think that's right. I would also say the modern argument of religious freedom is actually a lot different than, say, the traditional argument of religious freedom. Like in the modern sense, and the way that you would describe it right there, you can say like Satanists have religious freedom. That's not exactly what religious freedom was intended for.
And
Yeah.
I understand Euro's argument saying about the whole when you're 18, you have the right to do this, you have the right to do that, and blah blah blah. That's essentially what the whole division is right now. You have people like Michaela Kavanaugh, who is fervently fighting for minors to be able to undergo these treatments. She is a grown woman. She is an elected official who is doing her absolute damnedest to make sure that minors have access to this treatment as a way to affirm their beliefs. These are children. These are impressionable children who cannot get to the doctors themselves, who have to rely on their parents to take them there, who have to rely on their parents for absolutely everything, for the insurance, for the drugs, this, that, everything. And she is fighting for them to be able to do that so that these parents can mutilate their own children.
I understand what you're saying.
Following what the children want to do. That's the entirety of the fight. I agree with you on banning this outright for anybody under the age of 18. When you're under that age, you are very impressionable. You don't know what the hell is going on. You don't know what you want to do for a living. You don't know what you want to do in the future, what you want to do with your life. But yet, as soon as you say, I feel like this or I feel like that, and the first instinct for everyone in this cult is to affirm, not to talk to them, not to question them on if they know what this really means. It is immediately to go full bore for the hormone treatments, to go full bore for trying to follow through with this, not let's talk it out first.
Yeah, and and I agree with Brandon about, I'm very religious on my side as well with how this should be treated, and even medical professionals. If you guys know who Dr. Paul McHugh is,
No, I do not.
He was
please explain.
He was the former psychiatrist in chief for the John Hopkins Hospital. A couple of years back, when this started popping up, the guy started, elaborating on transgender dysphoria, and if is it a mental disorder? Is it a mental illness? All these people are saying no, it's not a mental illness. Well, this guy has been a psychiatrist for almost 40 to 50 years, I think, and he said that transgenderism is a mental disorder that merits treatment, and that a sex change is biological impossible, which we all know, and that people who promote sexual reassignment surgery are collaborating with and promoting a mental disorder. So that's all this is these people are promoting a mental disorder to children that do not understand, and they are literally ruining these children's lives at this point, because there's no going back once they have that surgery. I mean, you can get a surgery, but they'll never have that testosterone again while growing up that you biologically need. They'll never, females will never have that feminism growing up that they biologically need. And so they're ruining these chances for these children growing up. And it's inhumane is what it actually is. And to push your beliefs and your prospects on these children that have no idea, that are looking up to, these parents that are telling them what to do is it's called grooming. That's what it is, grooming. These parents are grooming these children to believe that they're transgender.
Exactly. No,
I don't disagree that it is in many cases a situation of grooming and all this. And I'm 100% with you, protect the children. But if a 20-something-year-old person decides, you know what, today I'm going to go chop off my penis, that's on them. It's the same thing with if you want to drink and you're over the legal age, you can drink. And if you want to go and sign up for the army, you can go and sign up for the army. Like, I'm all for freedoms in this country, as long as they don't directly harm anybody else. And I'd like to see statistics that indicate that people getting these transitional surgeries hurt anyone other than themselves.
Yeah, and I agree. I'm not disagreeing with you. If they're over 18, they do whatever they want. This country is freedom of religion, freedom of beliefs. You can believe whatever you want, and if they want to do that, fine. But just don't push it on the
There
children.
should definitely be things protecting from children and protecting from large scale influence and propaganda, which I think is a big issue of what it is it's basically on the verge of propaganda, what they're doing.
I tuned out for 2 seconds, because Josh had texted me and I had to argue with him about something. Did you say you don't see how it harms other people? Because I can explain.
Yes, I would love to hear an argument of how somebody transitioning is harming somebody else.
Well, any sort of transition is the way you harm other people is you are basically forcing people to follow your deranged ideology. Anytime you transition, so say you transition from male to female, you are expecting people, everyone, in pretty much every case, I would argue saying pretty much every case for this, for someone who transitions from male to female, female to male, whatever it is, you want everyone to follow your insane or deranged ideology. You are basically forcing your view on the world simply by doing it alone.
Are there any laws that force people to do that? No.
It's not about the law. It's about them themselves.
How are they directly hurting anybody? Is somebody
okay? So take a look at Twitter's rules and regulations. Take a look at Facebook's rules and regulations. If you were to refer to anybody who goes by, let's say, I am Vociferon, Lord of the Winter Mists, if you do not refer to them as their preferred pronoun, you will be banned. You have a stigma around in this culture, mainly amongst the left, where if you do not affirm them and you do not acknowledge them as whatever their preferred gender is, you will.
But can you guys also recognize that that's a cultural thing and that's not something that's inherent, that's not something backed by the law? That is purely cultural thing, and you're speaking on two platforms that are completely voluntary and have no impact on your day-to-day life. I mean, I get what you're saying. Yes, you're being quote-unquote forced culturally to abide by this, but it's the same thing as, a doctor. You're supposed to call a doctor by doctor. And if you don't do that, people are like, oh, well, you shouldn't really do that. You should call me by doctor or other things. Wait, I get where it's more extreme.
Respectfully, you're comparing calling someone doctor to calling a man who thinks he's a woman she.
No, I'm
getting banned for it on social media and say in schools.
I don't agree that you should get banned.
When I went to high school, there was a kid who didn't actually transition, but decided one day he wanted to be a girl. So he came in with yoga pants and a wig on. And when someone called him dude, they were suspended for 5 days.
I don't agree with that. What I'm saying is that there are ramifications that are in place upon people that shouldn't be. And we need to, as a country, go through these places like we've been doing. And, it's going on with the Twitter files right now and Elon Musk's overtake of Twitter, where they're expressing and making it more of a place where it's First Amendment, where you can say and do as you please. If you don't want to call somebody by their pronouns, you don't have to. You shouldn't be forced to. It's not hate speech. This isn't Canada. But what I'm saying is that's not impacting somebody else. Right now, currently, culturally, it is, and that's unfortunate. But it's not really. It's not being forced. Culturally.
Forced or not doesn't matter. That's not my point. My point is that these people, exactly, culturally,
But those are things that you can take them to the courts and you can win them. I've seen several cases where they've taken these things to the court and they've won that case because it is protected by the First Amendment. And they've won money because of it. They've been paid off for their...
You're not getting my point, though. That doesn't change the fact that there is an effect going on, that this ideology itself affects day-to-day life.
How many people do you know that have said something about it? I don't disagree that it is impacting things culturally, but I think that they should have the right, and it's not like, oh well, I just got drunk and decided to drive and I killed somebody. Nobody's getting killed over this.
But yeah, I never said someone's getting killed over it. I said it's affecting people. No, maybe people aren't getting killed over
Okay,
it. Not
but
yet anyway.
but you're trying to say you shouldn't be able to transition when you're legally allowed to drink, and that kills way more people. I think it's more severe to go out and drink and make that decision to drink and drive than it is to somebody to take the individual right and decision to transition, and then oh, you didn't call me by her because whatever reason. I don't like that. That's what I'm saying. Is nobody's dying over this other than themselves.
People are losing their jobs. People are being affected day to day. That's what it is. And again, maybe you don't want to take the religious from it, but it is in affront to God. And again, when children see people like this, like we can look at the drag shows. When a child sees a drag queen in general, even passing, it's confusing. When a child sees an obvious man with a wig and a dress on the street, it's confusing for the child. It harbors confusion, the whole thing. And I know we were talking about, I know you said at the same time, you're like, oh, well, we got to keep it away from the children. But inadvertently, to keep it away from the children, you have to keep it away from everyone else. Because,
I mean, do you take children to strip clubs?
I don't, but that's
exactly.
You don't need.
You're legally not allowed to.
But you don't need to go to a strip
club.
And
I think that it should be protected. It should be a case where it's protected. That's what I'm saying. I agree that right now, currently as it is, it should not be the way it is.
So do you think that people shouldn't be allowed to walk around New York City, a man with a dress and long hair, like a wig?
If somebody wants to dress up how they want to dress up, they can dress up how they want to dress up.
So that's what I'm saying, and then the point you're not getting is just.
I understand what you're saying. You're saying that somebody walking down the street, walking down Main Street in New York, sees somebody dressed as a man, but that doesn't have anything to do with transgender because there's people that just cross dress.
Well, that doesn't make it any less. That doesn't make it any less of a point because that also is pretty weird.
I mean, but what I'm saying is, like, are you going to ban cross-dressing? Are you going to have a dress code for men and a dress code for women? Like, you can't do that. You just can't do that in a free country. So, like, by that fact, like, you're trying to institute a dress code.
I honestly wouldn't think it'd be a bad thing. I'm the type of person.
You're advocating for a dress code.
I would advocate for a man cannot go out in the street just like one. I'd say keep that stuff in the bedroom. The way we have thought for most of America's history is keep that type of weird stuff in your house, in your bedroom. You're fine to do it in the privacy of your own home, but in public, we have a standard to uphold. There's reality.
I've been with you in this entire argument up until you started to talk about enforcing a dress code. Just going out in public, just for the sole fact that once you start something like that, I'm going to use a slippery slope argument. You're going to start enforcing more and more draconian laws.
Maybe a dress code.
I mean,
take a look at it like
mandates. No. Hold up. Let me finish my point. Take a look at the mask mandates that we had to live with for over a year and a half. Look at how many people complained and bitched about it on one side and not necessarily on the other side. If you start taking into account the mask mandates and you're going to try to do a dress code, it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same argument that the opposite side is going to have as opposed to what we had for the whole mask mandates. It makes no sense. You can't force people to put on an article of clothing like you couldn't force someone to put a mask on.
And like, how would you even rule that? Because like a Scottish kilt, is that considered a female item of clothing?
No, a Scottish kilt has far more of a masculine value than a skirt. Look it through most of America's history. Drag queens weren't going out into the street dressed like that. They essentially had to go out under fear of being mostly just patronized. That was most of America's history. It's not necessarily a dress code, but there's a sense of normalcy that needs to be kept up.
And that's a cultural thing. That's all I'm saying. Is it's a cultural thing that you can't control by law. Like, yes, there's going to be cultural ramifications for somebody saying various different things. Like, anybody that goes out in the street says the N-word, you're protected by the First Amendment law to say that. But people are going to look at you
Now,
funny.
will you survive if you go on 8th Street?
That's what I'm saying.
8th
It's
Street
a
in
cultural
Detroit?
thing. Like everything that you say is going to have a cultural ramification. I don't think that our culture should be the way that it is right now, and like I think that in many cases it's way too extreme, and people are going way off, and this shouldn't be as prevalent with kids as it is, and there should be laws protecting kids. But you can't just go and say, oh well, there needs to be a law saying that they can't go out and walk in public.
I do agree that there's limitations to it. Like, I don't agree with the dress code. Like, you can wear whatever the fuck you want. Who cares? But the most facts we're trying to get out of this is the genders, and we need to try and stay on this because we're going away from that and heading more into the Third Reich era.
So, no, but the way that both of them were arguing, it is true to the cultural ramifications. It's true to the whole disparity that we have when it comes to how far is too far in trying to curtail this mindset. Do we go full bore draconian to try to annihilate it and stem it out at the roots, or do we take more of a libertarian standpoint of trying to fight it, but at the same time let people live the way they want to be lived? You have to find a good middle ground when it comes to going against it, trying to change people culturally as opposed to just forcing it out. Because the more you force something out, the more you're going to have people fight back.
A middle ground with. There are certain things you
can't. No, I'm
I'm
not saying that you have to 100% go completely anti-trans and still agree with fighting against the woke mind virus. What I'm saying is you have to find a middle ground with fighting it. You can't just go full draconian and put in dress codes, but at the same time you got to be able to know how to fight against it and get people on your side and rally to you. Because if you start off with full draconian dress codes like we were talking about earlier, you're not going to get a lot of people on your side. You're just not. You got to try to change them culturally. You can't just implement law after law after law saying this is how things are going to be now. You have to win. You have to win it culturally. Look at Florida. Look at Nebraska, them trying to do it, except for the one crazy woman who's filibustering everything. We are winning. We are changing people's minds culturally. We are getting populace into these seats in government where they're trying to change things for the better. That is a net positive, but you can't just come out full on draconian. No, we're not going to allow this at all. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Yeah, and I agree. Like you're talking more of like not a middle ground, because like Brandon said, you'll never find a middle ground between.
It's not
sides,
about finding a middle ground.
Yeah.
You can't accept a middle ground with these people because any middle ground still has their deranged degeneracy in it in some way.
You're never going to get rid of the.
Then you're being an extremist. Like you have to. That's politics. You have to find middle ground. Like you have to. That's
something
how
that
politics
both
works.
sides can like come to an understanding for. So the trans side could come and be like, all right, 18 and over, right? This is just an example. They could say, hey, 18 and over, you can make any of these choices you want. And you're like, yeah, fine, that's fine. And then the guys that are trying to, like us, that are trying to keep that away from children would be like, hey, anything 17 and below, no go. It's like basically not agreeing on anything, but also keeping both sides happy with it.
Like they say, with all good business, and that's all politics really is, at the end of the day, it's making deals with, laws, essentially. And nobody's going to walk away happy. A good deal is when nobody walks away happy. You're both going to be upset that you didn't get some part of what you wanted, but you got a middling of it, and that's really all that we can hope for. And I think the best that we can hope for is protecting the children, and that's really what matters at the end of the day. Because if you protect the children, then 9 times out of 10 this is going to dwindle down, because it's when they're young and vulnerable is when they're getting influence in these heavy ways.
Yeah, I agree. Protect the children. Keep out of their lives. Let them be children. Let them grow up how they want to grow up. They want to make the decisions later on. Let them, but just keep away from the children, man. It's almost on the same basis as like pedophiles, right? Like, I'm not trying to get into that conversation, but keep the people away from our kids, because We need to let our kids be kids. But I agree. You guys have any other points for this?
I think this has been a phenomenal conversation.
Yeah,
I agree.
We're starting to dwindle down for this one now.
Indeed.
You guys got any other points for this?
I mean, I'd just stand. I'm just gonna say I stand my ground. It's very simple. Yeah, Leviticus 19:28. You can't mutilate yourself. And
Right.
It's an affront to God. I don't think people should be able to do it, and I'll never stand here and say I will meet a middle ground of okay, but adults can do it. We should protect the children, but it's better to try and protect everybody.
I understand where you're coming from, and that's a very, but you have to recognize that's a very extremist religious view, and not everybody's going to agree with that.
I agree. With.
Of course, I'm an extremist.
This is Brandon Toronto and 5 other groups.
I agree with the sentiment, and while I personally disagree with it abhorrently, and I think it's important for people to want to do this to them, you got to start somewhere. Start with stopping it being enforced on kids. You got to go after the parents who are just mutilating their children just because kid doesn't know any better. They think that mommy's only going to love me when I say what she wants to hear. So you got to start with that. You got to stop it. You got to build the culture around protecting the kids, letting them make their own decisions. If they decide to mutilate themselves in such a way, think about it like this: they are sterilizing their bloodline. They are not going to be able to reproduce. They are not going to be able to win out in the long run, and eventually, their ideology will die out to almost nothing. Let them sterilize themselves. Let them sterilize their kids. Their bloodline will no longer matter. Give it enough time.
And I like Brandon, I completely agree with you that I don't think anybody should, do that to themselves and everything. But if I could have a small win where I could say, hey, nothing that goes to the children can be affected by this, then I can focus on the adults, then I would take that.
Well, that would be a very large win. Of course, you take your wins one step at a time. You don't win a war with one battle. My ultimate point is, though, I'm not going to sit here and just say I'm trying to protect the children. We have to protect everybody, because everybody, no one goes through this happy. I have never, ever, and I don't believe I ever will, because I don't think it's possible. I don't think I've ever seen a happy person who has transitioned because it isn't the right way, and it needs to be stopped.
Yeah. You got any last closing out arguments, Trevor?
Well, you're talking to somebody who, jokingly but also not jokingly believes that crackheads should be able to be crackheads if they want to be crackheads, because crackheads are going to do crackhead shit and they're going to kill themselves off, and then you don't have crackheads. So. Yeah,
I thought like that a while ago. I have enhanced past that, but I did used to have that same sentiment.
Yeah, Bill, that's all I really have to say.
Okay.
Alrighty. Well, that seems like we're it. Everyone remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Come back for more.
Hold on. I gotta do my quote, bro. What are you doing?
All right,
I do it.
I'm trying to get his quote out.
God, I mean, it's embarrassing.
Man, you've only been here twice. I forgot.
How dare you? I've been here 4 times. How dare you? Take it back.
We'll have to look back at the logs for that, bud.
Yeah, look through the logs. All right, so this one comes straight for our D-Rump man. All right, the man, the myth, the legend, Trump. He said, "Get going, move forward, aim high, plan a takeoff. Don't just sit on the runway and hope someone will come along and push the airplane. It simply won't happen. Change your attitude and gain some altitude. Believe me, you'll love it up here." Boom, drop the mic. That's how we end it, baby.
Motivational.
Just like Barack Obama. All right, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so that you will get live updates, and we will catch you all next time.
See you, boy.
Have a good one.